Everyone said the basement was just an ordinary storage room: boxes, broken furniture, and a few forgotten toys. Nothing dangerous, nothing paranormal. At least, that is what they believed. The kids thought it would be the perfect place to play their favorite game, far away from adults and rules. It was supposed to be simple fun: laughing, hiding, and running around in the dark like they always did. No one expected the basement to react. No one imagined that something down there had been waiting for years, silently listening, craving attention. Once they stepped onto those cold stairs, the game changed. The basement was awake, and it wanted to play too. It started with a simple idea. A rainy afternoon, nothing interesting on TV, and three friends desperate for excitement. The house felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound echo. Someone joked about exploring the basement, and suddenly it felt like the best adventure they could have. They raced toward the old wooden door, giggling as if they were sneaking into a secret world. The hinges groaned when they pushed it open, sending a shiver through the dark space below. Dust floated in the air, and a single bulb swung gently, casting crooked shadows on the walls. Even though the darkness stretched much farther than they expected, they convinced themselves it was safe. After all, scary things only happen in movies. At least that is what they told each other. The stairs creaked under their weight, warning them to turn back. None of them listened. They just wanted to play. They did not notice how the temperature dropped with each step. They did not notice how the shadows seemed to gather around them, curious and hungry. All that mattered was the thrill of doing something they should never have done. Before any of them realized it, the basement door behind them slowly began to close. The real game was about to begin. The floor felt colder than ice when their shoes touched the concrete. A slight draft brushed past their legs, almost like someone had exhaled in the dark. They walked deeper, using the dim light from their phones to guide the way. Old toys were scattered everywhere, as if someone left in a hurry and never came back. A dusty rocking horse stood in the corner, still swaying slightly although no one had touched it. The children stopped, staring at it, waiting for it to settle. It didn't. They brushed it off as a trick of the air. Curiosity kept them moving. One of them noticed a faded cardboard box labeled "Don't Open." A challenge, a dare, exactly the sort of thing children never resist. Inside, they found tiny clothes, a cracked porcelain doll, and an old family photo with a child's face scratched out. A strange pressure built in the room, like the walls were holding their breath. Something tapped twice behind them. They spun around, but nothing moved. No footsteps, no shifting shadows. Only silence, heavier than before. Trying to be brave, they laughed uneasily and said the basement was just old. That sounds happen in old places. Yet every instinct screamed to leave. They ignored it, because adventures never end early. Someone whispered quietly, "Let's go a little further." The basement agreed. They decided to start a quick game of hide and seek, trying to shake off the feeling that the basement was watching. Laughter returned for a moment. One kid covered his eyes and began counting, while the others darted behind shelves and stacks of boxes. The darkness swallowed their footprints, and every corner felt deeper than it should. When the countdown reached 0, the seeker moved through the room slowly, whispering that he would find them. Behind a tall cabinet, a loose marble rolled across the floor all on its own. The hiding child froze. It stopped right at his shoe, like an invitation to run. In the silence, a faint giggle echoed. It did not belong to either of his friends. The seeker called out that he heard someone breathe nearby, yet no one answered. The shadows on the wall stretched longer, twisting into shapes that looked nothing like children. Then the rocking horse creaked again. This time, it tilted forward and slammed back with force, like something invisible climbed onto it. The seeker shouted that the hiding game was over, but the basement did not care about their rules. The temperature dropped sharply, making their breath appear in thin white clouds. They huddled together, realizing the game took on a life of its own. Before they could move toward the stairs, the light bulb above them flickered wildly. The last thing they saw before darkness swallowed the room was the porcelain doll from the box, now standing upright in the middle of the floor, facing them. Something else wanted to play. The darkness was absolute. Not the kind you get when a light switch flips off, but a thick, suffocating black that pressed against their eyes. They fumbled with their phones, trying to turn the flashlights back on. The screens refused to respond, like the basement had drained them dry. A soft thump echoed from behind the doll, followed by the slow scrape of something dragging across the floor. Whispers drifted from the shadows, childlike, curious, asking questions they could not understand. Each word chilled their bones. One of the kids remembered a rumor whispered by neighbors. People said a child once lived in this house, someone who loved playing games in the basement, someone who vanished without ever being found. The adults dismissed the story as nonsense, but those whispers suggested the truth was much darker. A sudden gust rushed past them, and the doll's head twisted to face the tallest boy. Its cracked smile looked wider than before, as if it had noticed a new friend to pull into its world. The boy stepped back, bumping into a shelf that rattled violently. Items began dropping to the floor around them, not randomly, but like invisible hands pushed each thing off deliberately. The whispers grew louder, closer. They did not feel alone anymore. Something had finally woken up, and it was excited. Too excited. The basement had waited for years to hear laughter again. Now it wanted more than laughter. It wanted company forever. They ran toward the stairs, praying the door would still open. Their shoes pounded the concrete as the basement howled with voices that did not sound human anymore. When they reached the top step, one of them grabbed the handle and pulled with every bit of strength left in his shaking arms. The door flew open like something on the other side had been waiting. They stumbled into the hallway, gasping, faces pale, refusing to look back. For a moment, everything went silent. They slammed the door shut and locked it, then stared at each other in disbelief. The house looked normal again. No whispers, no cold air, just the familiar world they had always known. They tried to convince themselves that it was all a prank gone too far, that the basement was just old and creepy. Their parents never believed a word they said, calling it overactive imagination. Days passed. Life returned to its routine. Almost. The tallest boy woke one night to the sound of tiny footsteps pacing in his room. His phone light flickered, revealing a porcelain doll standing beside his bed, its cracked smile aimed right at him. Another child found a dusty marble rolling out from his closet, stopping perfectly at his feet. Every night, new items from the basement appeared in places no one could explain. The game was not over. The basement had found its new players, and darkness does not let go once it chooses you. It always follows.